Black Panther is about representation. Welcome to Legend Comics, the show for people who are interested in comics but don't know where to start. My name is Gabriel, and I've been a comic book nerd since I was a teenager, which really didn't do me many favors in high school, but nowadays even your grandma knows who the Guardians of the Galaxy are, so my odds are looking a lot better. With your grandma. So on February 16th, the world will see the debut of the superhero movie Black Panther, coming from the juggernaut of superhero entertainment, the Disney-owned Marvel Studios. And, you know, juggernaut isn't even an exaggeration here. Because with Disney's recent acquisition of Fox Studios, the Marvel movies now have the rights to use almost all of the Marvel Comics characters, which is great from a comic fan standpoint, but it opens up a lot of concerns about the fact that Disney now holds the largest number of intellectual properties by a large margin, and Disney isn't exactly known for allowing their property to become public domain. I mean, just look up the Mouse Protection Act sometime. And if Disney owns all of the characters and doesn't allow anything to become public domain, then we might be looking at an apocalyptic future where you're required to pay royalties to the Disney monopoly anytime anyone wants to create an original character of their own, and maybe the world is actually going to end up like the future in Cloud Atlas, the book, not the movie, where Disney has so much control over public conscience that people don't even refer to movies as movies anymore, they just call them Disney's! But I really like comic book movies, so, you know, who cares? The Black Panther movie will focus around the character of T'Challa, also known as the titular Black Panther. Early projections are saying that come next week, this movie is going to be a cultural phenomenon, and everybody and their mothers are going to be talking about it. So I want to get you ahead of the game as to what makes Black Panther so captivating. But here at Legend Comics, we use these comic book movies as a jumping off point to talk about the comic books that inspired them. And hopefully, I'll be able to pique your interest towards reading a comic book that you might not have tried otherwise. Now, Black Panther has a detailed history as a character, and he's been written by a handful of amazingly talented creators, including the grandfather of superhero comics himself, Stan Lee. Which reminds me that I need to get Stan Lee's autograph soon, because the number of conventions that he'll be attending in the near future is limited. Now, I'll be the first to admit that superheroes can be needlessly confusing. If I were to make a video about, say, Hawkman, then it would take me roughly an hour of non-stop talking to even come close to explaining everything about him. Things that include but are not limited to possibly sentient metals, Egyptian pharaohs, reincarnation, an alien planet full of hawk people, a parasitic space dragon powered by love, an eternal demon that might actually be Batman, and the most dapper looking of ghosts. But luckily, we're not talking about Hawkman. We're talking about Black Panther, who in comparison is pretty straightforward. All you need to know is that he is an exceptional fighter, a master planner, and the monarch of a highly advanced African nation known as Wakanda. And I don't even want to get into his full history today. I just want to talk about a particular moment that I think any new reader can enjoy, but also exemplifies the craftsmanship in making an engaging comic book. And that moment comes from 1998 to 2003's Black Panther Volume 3, written by Christopher Priest. At the beginning of the video, I said that Black Panther is about representation. And I think Christopher Priest realizes that more so than just about any writer who has approached the character. Being created in 1966, Black Panther has the distinction of being one of the first and most prominent black superheroes. That in and of itself makes the character mean more than just what is on the page. He represents a role model, a hero. And that's exactly what Christopher Priest did with the character. He defined him by what Black Panther represented to the world around him. He showed Black Panther as a calculating intellectual, as an unsurpassed warrior, as a loyal friend, and as a benevolent king. I mean, Black Panther had his faults as well, but he was always the kind of character, the kind of person that you could aspire to be. But I personally believe that Christopher Priest and the artists he worked with were so enthralled by this idea of representation that they extended it beyond just the character and into the graphic art of the comic book itself. And a fascinating example of this is presented in Black Panther Volume 3, Issue 14, written by Christopher Priest and drawn by Sal Velluto. So the theme here is representation. And we're going to approach that theme by focusing on 3 different items: Black Panther's boots, Black Panther's dagger, and the villain of this issue, Hydro Man. The issue kicks us off with Hydro Man hijacking a passenger plane with the intention of crashing it into the White House, which is really above Hydro Man's pay grade. I mean, this guy started off by jumping out of buckets of water and scaring people, but I digress. Black Panther intercepts the hijacked plane by jumping from midair onto its exterior. And it's here that we see the first example of Black Panther's boots, or as they're referred to in the comic, vibranium boots, which, because they are electrically charged, they allow Black Panther to magnetize to and walk along the airplane's hull. It might seem like a ridiculous notion at first, but these boots are the first step towards showcasing this comic's use of artistic representation. Now, to understand the significance of the vibranium boots, we have to ask ourselves why they exist at all. I mean, this is most definitely a comic book, and Black Panther is a superhero. He doesn't need the justification as to how he's climbing on the outside of a moving plane. Most of the time, superheroes do feats like that without a second thought, real-world physics be damned. But the comic gives us that justification anyways. He can do it because his vibranium boots allow him to. It is making a point to visually represent everything that Black Panther does so those elements can be used later. So let's move forward. Black Panther used his vibranium boots to scale the outside of this plane. He is now inside the plane, and he is using his electrified dagger, known as his energy dagger, to cut between cabins and stealthily navigate around the plane, trying to locate and stop the villainous Hydro Man. Why does Black Panther have an energy dagger at all? I mean, he's modeled after a panther. His suit has functioning panther claws. We actually saw those claws earlier. Why couldn't the energy and electricity come out of his claws and basically accomplish the same function that the energy dagger does here? Well, the answer is the same as the vibranium boots. The comic is visually representing everything that Black Panther does, and in this case, it's doing so with a dagger, an object that, unlike his claws, can be used outside of his costume, thrown as a projectile, and held by people other than Black Panther. This is not a poorly designed comic book. Black Panther doesn't carry a dagger just because it looks cool. The creators of this comic make him use a dagger because it can be easily manipulated around the environment and thus create more opportunities to shape the narrative. And now that we've extensively analyzed the importance of Black Panther's vibranium boots and his energy dagger, we can address the final talking point: Hydro Man. As you might have guessed, Hydro Man is a villain whose body is entirely comprised of water, and he can use said water menacingly. Shortly after Black Panther enters the plane, he is attacked by Hydro Man. Black Panther resolves this initial struggle by electrifying his suit and causing his water-powered adversary to retreat. In fact, the narration of the fight specifically mentions that Hydro Man became electrolyzed, and that was what weakened him. Electrolyzed. Remember that. Black Panther then finds his way to the passenger cabin with the hope of landing the plane and getting everyone to safety. But another appearance from Hydro Man puts those plans on hold. This time, though, Black Panther is 100% prepared. And more importantly, the writer, Christopher Priest, is prepared to use the vibranium boots, the energy dagger, and Hydro Man himself, all items that at this point have been meticulously placed into the reader's conscience together in an electrifying conclusion. Oh, I'm not sorry. Hydro Man releases an assault upon Black Panther, and in the process steals Panther's energy dagger, his positively charged energy dagger. Black Panther, having planned for this moment from the beginning of their conflict, activates his vibranium boots, his negatively charged vibranium boots, and kicks Hydro Man right in the stomach. So what happens when a negatively charged object meets a positively charged object through a conduit of water? Well, it creates a process known as electrolysis that we've already seen happen to Hydro Man, except the process is much stronger this time, and it breaks Hydro Man's liquid body down into its base atomic forms of hydrogen and oxygen. And now, with one final interesting use of representation in this comic, we see our villain's atomic form like this. This is such a fascinating way to portray the idea of atoms. I mean, this isn't what atoms really look like at all. But when you see this image, as you're reading through the comic, it just feels right. It's a perfect representation of an idea. And now the comic ends, with Black Panther giving Hydro Man one more genuinely deserved punch in the face, the plane safely landing, and Hydro Man getting electrocuted again, but this time his now oxygenized state causes him to light on fire. For only being 22 pages long, this issue is a masterclass in presenting all of the items and plot points that it's going to use, and then combining them in an engaging and satisfactory way. The literary term for this is Chekhov's gun, which states that in the first act, if you have hung a pistol on the wall, then in the following one it should be fired. Basically, you should only set up plot points if you intend to use them later. This comic excels at that notion. Every item that is introduced is used, but I think it goes above and beyond in that its Chekhov's guns are presented in a very specific way for the sake of the reader and the sake of the story itself. For example, Hydro Man was specifically chosen as the villain of this issue because he's made out of water, and that opens up way more creative dynamics than if he had just been a normal bad guy. And Black Panther's energy dagger is specifically a dagger because it needs to be picked up and moved around the environment by Hydro Man so that Hydro Man can become positively charged. And Black Panther's vibranium boots are boots because it looks climactic as hell when Black Panther kicks Hydro Man so hard he breaks him down into his atomic structure. God, this is so cool. Setups and payoffs like this are the reason I love comic books. The entire scenario that I talked about in this video is a result of Black Panther using his wits and the tools available to him to solve a dire situation. And really, that's the narrative again and again in this entire series. Black Panther proves himself as a hero by being competent, collected, and innovative in every situation he encounters. And the tools he needs to solve those situations are always represented at key points throughout the story, so it feels intensely satisfying when those tools are used later. Every time I reread this story, I'm impressed by how naturally gifted Christopher Priest and Sal Velluto are as storytellers. Because by simply telling a good story, they exemplify some of the best the comic books have to offer as an artistic medium, but also offer a genuine hero to aspire to. I wholeheartedly recommend Black Panther Volume 3, not just issue 14, but all of it. Because whether you're looking for a role model or looking for captivating visual storytelling, Black Panther is about representation.